What does God want from Kenya? We do not often ask that question, do we? But it's a crucial question. Not what I want from God, but what does God want from me? What does God want from Kenya?
Most of us will be familiar with the parable of the talents that Jesus tells in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25. It talks of a servant who was given 5, who was given 2, and yet another one who was given 1. But just as that master invested in his servants and then he went on a journey, I think God has invested in our country, Kenya, many talents for which we need to use and for which we need to be faithful. Can I just sample a few of them for you? One, we've got a huge population of about 50 million people. That's a huge gospel opportunity. But secondly, God has given us infrastructure. There are roads being built almost in every corner of this country. There is access to electricity. There is water, gas, even high income levels. I say there's even mobile phones and internet and M-Pesa. You could virtually send money to any part of the world from this country. Comparing to the rest of Africa, I think this country is doing very well. But besides that, can I also say, number 3, that God has given us great peace. We have enjoyed relative peace since independence for more than 50 years. We've never really been at war. We have known peace as a country. But we also have access. We have access to many countries of this world. We can travel virtually to any country in Africa and any country of the world, really, for that matter. And in 36 countries of those, you don't need any visa at all to get there. There are Kenyans in every corner of this world. But you know what is given us, which is the most important and most precious thing? It is the gospel. 175 years ago, men came to this country to preach the good news to our ancestors, reminding us of a Father, a loving Father who has given His only Son, that whosoever would believe in Him will not perish but have eternal life.
But my fellow Christians in Kenya, these talents that God has so much invested in us were not just free handouts. You see, although we are saved by grace, but these gracious gifts comes with a responsibility. And you see, just like the Master in Matthew chapter 25, our Master, the Lord Jesus Christ, is coming back. Praise Jesus. And the big question is, when He comes back, are we going to spend what He has already given to us in investing, or are we going to be burying them on the ground? Indeed, that's a big question. Are we going to bury them on the ground, or are we going to invest them? Where are the Kenyans willing to give up the comfortable life in the cities and in the rural areas and go and suffer for the sake of the unreached? Where are the parents who are willing to let their children go so that they can be able to reach out to others with the gospel? Where are the partners who are willing to pray and to support financially those who will be going? It's our turn to send missionaries.
Nafikiria wa Kenya twende ends of the earth kufanya nini? Kwa sababu kuna shida 3. Tutafikiria tuko na shida zetu, we have our own needs. Tutafikiria mimi sijaitwa, as in mimi sijasikia God akiongea mimi hapa kwangu ama kwa watu wangu. Na thirdly, tutafikiria akisi tumisota, tutatumaje missionaries? Lakini acha nianze na kwanza. Unafikiria Kenya iko na needs? As in, ni honest, tutakula food ama tutatuma missionaries? Lakini ukweli ni hii country wanasema kuna 30% of all our population wanaenda church. Lakini unajua kwa wale wazungu nafikiria hao ndio wanafaa kuenda, that only a 2%. Nani ndio wanafaa kwa kienda? Si kazi ya kuachia wazungu, ni kazi ya kwamba kama umeamini ukweli, wataka wengine wajue ukweli.
Look at this map of Africa. The red dots that are there represent the people who have no access to the gospel. If they woke up today, they will not have a church near them. And those red dots, if you put all of them together, they will represent 374 million people who have not heard the gospel. Now, kama wewe ni Mkenya, hiyo ni mara 7 ya watu walioko katika Kenya hii.
Yes, there are needs in Kenya, but there are more needs out there. And frankly speaking, if we are waiting for the Western missionaries to come, they will never reach the deepest parts of our continent. They are too few in number, and their culture is totally different. And in fact, it's also very expensive to have them. we need to have a significant impact on our continent.
Secondly, I haven't been called, or my children haven't been called. We often think we need a specific calling from God to go and be a missionary overseas. But in Matthew 28 verse 8, Jesus says to his disciples and to all who will follow him, "All authority in heaven and in earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. And behold, I am with you to the end of the age." Notice firstly that Jesus says to his disciples that I will be with you to the end of the age. Now the disciples are all long gone, but here we are. We have been called by God to go out and make disciples. He is calling you and me and all of us to be into this project, which is God's message of making disciples around the world.
But how are we going to make disciples of all these people? People in Senegal, people in Morocco, people in Rwanda. Listen to what Paul says in Romans chapter 10. How can they call on him whom they haven't believed? And how can they believe whom they have not heard? And how can they hear unless someone preaches? And how can they preach unless they are sent? How beautiful are the feet of them who bring the good news.
So for that reason, then we say that Kenyans are too poor to send missionaries on to overseas. Is that true? Look at the statistics again. And compare that to UK in 1850, when the population was only 14.2 million, with a GDP of $1631 and 25 hospitals in the whole of England. What do we have in Nairobi today? In the UK, there was no gas, there was no electricity, there were no cars, there were no aeroplanes, there was no internet, there was even less money. They didn't even have M-Pesa, mobile money, which we have today. Even today, they do not have M-Pesa. But what then did they do? They were far less developed those days, yet they were able to be at the top of sending missionaries in their history time. In 1844, Johann Ludwig Kraft came into Kenya. And what happened to him on his arrival? His wife and daughter died out of malaria. But what happens to this guy? He comes and translates the New Testament into Swahili 50 years, even before colonialism started.
Just imagine if Ludwig Kraft would have said, there are many gospel needs in Europe, or we don't have the money, or God has not called us to Africa. Then you and me will not have heard the gospel for the first time and will be among the 374 million who have never heard the gospel. But thank God that they did not believe in any of those lies. They did believe that God had called them to Africa. They did believe that there are more needs out there for the gospel. And they did believe that they even had the money for the gospel.
What about us Kenyans? What do we believe? What we will do? How will we invest out God's given privileges? Will we bury the gospel in the land of Kenya? Or are we going to plant it among the unreached people in Africa? Remember, that number stands at 374 million people.
Where are the Kenyans willing to give up their comfortable life in Nairobi and cities and in the rural areas and go and suffer for the sake of the unreached? Where are the parents who are willing to let their children go so they can be able to reach out with the gospel? Where are the partners, people who are willing to pray and to support financially those who will be going out? It is our turn to send missionaries.
So why don't we join hands, my fellow countrymen, to raise and to send missionaries to the rest of Africa, and indeed to the rest of the world, so that on that last day, God could say to you and I, well done, good and faithful servants.
It is our turn to send missionaries.
Ni wakati wetu.
Ni wakati wetu.
Ni wakati wetu.
Ni wakati wetu.